Perfect. Well, thanks everyone for joining Jesse's webinar series today. For those that don't know me, I'm James Gibson, one of the solutions account managers here at JASCI. We also have Joe Rist on the line. Joe, would you like to make an introduction?
Yeah, hey everybody, thanks for joining us. My name is Joe Rist. I'm the Director of Solution Sales here at JASCI, and I will once again be guiding us through this webinar today on inventory control and management.
Perfect. So there we go. It wasn't letting me move. Sorry, guys. So today we're going to be going over inventory management. So we're going to be going over our cycle count controls and approvals, how to set up a cycle count and the frequency and rules that go along with that. Some system and user directed cycle counts. So we're going to be performing cycle counts on the mobile device in Joe's demonstration. We're going to be doing some audit locations and location checks, as well as some inventory moves and adjustments within a location. So if there's any questions, throughout the demonstration, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll be monitoring that. And then without further ado, Joe, I'm happy to pass things over to you.
Sure. Yeah, let me go ahead and share my screen if you could just confirm that that's showing, James.
Yep, I can see that on my side.
Okay, great. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll get started here. What our topics are today is going to be a lot of what your inventory control team is going to be performing on the floor. And we're also going to talk about how you can automatically set up some of these inventory control pieces from JASCI, meaning our cycle counts. We can automate our cycle counts. We have something called location checks, which will help ensure that you have healthy and accurate inventory year round instead of needing to lean on days where you basically shut down operations and have to do a whole bunch of cycle counts, and basically a full physical count. We aim to eliminate that with JASCI by being able to automatically weave these cycle counts in. And then also when there's issues at a location, we create something called a location check so you can go in real time, correct that issue so that you're not impacting the rest of the flow of the warehouse downstream, like when it comes to allocating the picks that you're going to go send people to that location for. So to get started, we're going to talk about cycle count controls first. So if we go to our inventory tab, one of the areas that we store this is going to be under that cycle count submenu, and we have a few things that we're going to be talking about in here today. But I'm going to start with the cycle count controls. Now, the cycle count controls is going to be groupings of controls based on the area, because you may have different preferences if it's a prime picking area, or maybe it's a bulk or reserve area that you mostly use for replenishments or full pallet picks. You may have different requirements for counting within those. So we're going to go into my prime area and we can hit edit. We can also hit copy if we'd like to clone those rules into another area. We can hit copy, and then we can also save notes about our cycle count controls. Maybe if you've changed what those rules are and you want to keep a note of that alongside the system. So we're going to go in and hit edit, and this is going to show us our cycle count controls for that prime area. And there's a few fields that we're going to explain here. So the first one that you see is the count method. Right now it is set to quantity, meaning that the user is going to enter in the quantity that they've counted. We have a few other methods. For example, you can enter in the amount of cases that you see. And if you have a case unit of measure, we can calculate that case unit or that total quantity based on that unit of measure. And we also have one called each. And each is where you are actually going to scan each individual item to have it count as a quantity of one as you scan each item. Some of our customers have a requirement for that. Maybe it's a stricter industry like pharmaceuticals or medical devices where they need to scan every single item rather than entering a quantity. But most of our customers are going to be using this quantity setting for the count method. Now, immediately below that, we have the display variants. I have it set to display all because during my demonstrations and webinars, I like to show the result of the cycle count, what's going to be changing at the location. But maybe you want to set it up to be more of a blind count for your operators, and you just want them to do a true count and move on, instead of trying to game the system, like a lot of people might do if they're performing, cycle counts. The goal of JASCI is to get this to be a true count as they're going and performing these system-directed cycle counts. So you can often choose to do not display the variance or the result of that count. But I'm going to leave it as display all because we're going to jump into a count here in just a moment. You also have down here the number of times you'd like all locations to be counted within a year. So if you have a requirement to quarterly count your locations, you could set this to 4 as an example. And then also to make sure that we're not creating too many cycle counts at once, you could say how many cycle counts you'd like created daily. And that helps kind of throttle how many cycle counts you're throwing at your inventory control team and gives you better labor visibility into what they've accomplished for the day. Um, Down here below that, we have the max variance allowed. So this is going to be the max amount of quantity variance that's allowed within a location in this area that we're setting up the rules for. Now, this can also be based on a few other factors like the product, or could be based on the team members' threshold for what their maximum variance allowed is. So, what I typically recommend to our customers is that you set a pretty decent max variance for your area. However, if you have newer employees, you can set their authority to have, let's say this was 50, maybe you don't want them to have a variance of more than 20. You can set that at the team member level instead of having to set it up for the rules. So it can vary by team member. And we have a lot of other authorities that we'll get into down the road in some of our other webinars that can help influence what a team member or user is able to perform within the system. Now, down below the max variance, we also have the create location check on variance. So if you have this marked to yes, you'll also put in a percentage that you want this to be based on. So if it's more than a 10% variance within that location, we will automatically create a location check. Now, a location check, we're going to show that workflow in a little bit here, but we have those in JASCI to be able to notice that there was an issue, whether it was someone tried to pick from a location and hit the cut button, or maybe they tried to go put something away and realized they couldn't and chose a new location, or maybe it was a variance in the cycle count. We want to get that corrected before we try to send more pickers there, and then they end up not being able to pick the product because maybe it's not there. So this location check is kind of like a cycle count, but it's going to exist when there was an issue with the process that was expected in JASCI. So the location checks are a great, very powerful tool to use, and it's important to stay on top of them. The reason it's important to stay on top of them too is also because we're going to prevent allocation from a location that has a location check. Now we do have a toggle down here called location check allocatable. And if you still wanted to allocate from those locations that have a check on them, um, you can set this to yes, and we'll still be able to allocate and send pickers there. But the whole point of a location check is to correct an issue and to prevent double work where a picker goes to that location again and they have to hit cut and go find a new location. You'd rather just correct it in real time. So I always recommend that you leave that set to no and have your inventory control team really stay on top of those location checks. Um, so we talked about the location check on variance and the variance percentage. And then also I mentioned one of the methods of creating those location checks is if a picker goes to a location and they hit the cut button, meaning they couldn't find that product or they couldn't find the expected quantity of that product in the location that they were picking from. Now we have two options here. You can either have that create just a generic cycle count, which will be system directed, or you can have it create a location check, which is usually what I recommend. Now we do have a field down here where you'd like to be able to enter the quantity versus scanning each individual item if it's over a certain amount. Let's say, for example, there's 10 of them in there, and if it's more than 10, you don't want them to have to scan all 10 of those items. You'd rather than just press the 10 or type in 10. So this is going to be enter quantity if it's less than or equal to that value. We also have the expiration date validation. So you can set this to yes if you have expiry products. And then according to the workflow, based on the product that you scanned, it'll recognize if that is an expiry product and ensure that the person doing the cycle count verifies that expiration date. And we can also, with the workflows, we can also verify lot as well. LPNs, any of those product attributes that you want your operators to confirm during any of the workflows. That can also happen during the cycle count. Um, So these controls, what this is going to do is be your rule set for the system automatically creating these cycle counts. And to show you an example of, the cycle counts that are out there and created, we're going to go to one of our screens called Gravity. Gravity is a patented tool by JASCI that you could set up profiles of work and show you in real time how much work, how many lines, how much quantity, the priority, how many of these work or tasks are aging. And you can also categorize them. Like you see here, I have an inbound tab, an inventory tab, a picking tab. So if we go to our inventory tab, this is going to show us all of my inventory profiles. Now I have profiles that observe how many cycle counts I have open by zone. That's just something that I decided to do for my demonstration environment. You don't have to do it by zone. You can also do it by product. You can do a whole range of variables in here for how you create your gravity profiles. And we'll dive deeper into that in a future webinar. It's a really powerful tool, gravity waveless work management. It's not just for the outbound side and picking and controlling what picks are going to happen first, but it's also for any work that's existing within JASCI, and then also even monitoring work that's actively assigned to people in the event that you need to reassign it. So here, if we see some of our cycle count profiles, I know I have one cycle count open in zone 200, and then I have 29 of them open in zone 400. So that's where I'm going to do a cycle count as an example, is zone 400. And you'll also see I've created some location check profiles by zone, and this is telling me how many I have out there. So now if we just look over to the right on our mobile device, I'm going to go into that inventory tab and then into cycle count. And I actually have a few different cycle count directed flows within here. The most common one is going to be that cycle count directed, but it's important to know that JASCI also has aisle control because a lot of times if you're doing cycle counts, you don't want to send pickers down that same aisle with equipment um, and have them kind of in the way or having a traffic jam with the cycle counters. So if you would like to use aisle control, that is a feature that JASCI has. You also see this one called cycle count location or CC location. That is the non-system directed version of the cycle count where you're basically declaring the location that you'd like to count in. So let's go to our cycle count directed and we're going to enter our work zone within this. So we're going to say zone 400. As we see here, we've got a whole bunch of them in that zone. And when we scan that, it's going to bring us to the next prioritized cycle count that we want to perform. So it's going to tell us the location to go to, and we're going to go to that location and scan it to confirm that we are at the correct location. So I'm going to type it in here since I'm not actually in a warehouse. Um, and when we scan this location, it's going to confirm that we scanned the correct one. And then it's going to move us on to entering our products that we see there. Now, it's not going to tell us any details about this because cycle counts are supposed to be blind. So I could scan whatever product I see and then enter the quantity, or I could simply hit count done if I believe this is a location that's empty, which is what I'm going to do here. First, I'm going to hit count done. And this was actually an empty location. So it's saying, hey, you had no inventory, your count was zero, and your adjustment is zero. Perfect, perfect count. So we had a system directed cycle count. We approached an empty location. We said it was empty, and because we have that display variance, it's actually showing us what that result was, and if we had any kind of an inventory change there. So we're going to hit update, and this is going to move us on to the next location. So we're going to scan this location ID, which is the 503-04B101. And again, you're going to not be typing these usually. You're going to have a barcode on your location that you scan with the mobile device. Now, this time, I'm going to enter a product and a quantity for that product. Now, I don't know what's actually in this location. I didn't look up ahead of time. So we'll find out on the next screen if there actually is an item in there or if we are oh, I forgot. Oh, we actually have this set to the amount of cases because this is zone 400 where I store cases. So we're going to say we have 4 cases of 4 each in here, which would be a total of 16. And we're going to enter that quantity. And now it's saying, okay, are there any more products within there? So I scanned my product. I declared how many cases. Again, if you have it set to quantity, it's going to ask you just a pure quantity, just a numeric value. And then also if you have it set to each, it's going to have you scan each item. So let's go ahead and say that's the only product that's in this location. When I hit count done, it's going to tell me, hey, this was actually an empty location. I'm saying that I'm adjusting 16 of this in based on my cycle count. So that adjustment value is going to be 16. Now, I have a button in here in the workflow to hit clear, and we can go and we can say, let's, recount this. But I'm just going to hit update because that's what I physically saw, and I want it to update the system. So when I hit update, it's going to look at my rules of what's allowed or not. If I'm allowed to enter in, a large value there that's different from what the system actually thinks. If it was going to not allow me to do a change of that magnitude, it's going to give us an error right on the screen. It says, "Hey, you can't. This exceeds your allowable tolerance," and it's going to create a location check. Now we do have an additional way to monitor those cycle counts that are disagree with what the system has and what the user said that they counted, and that's in our cycle count posting approval. So this screen actually acts as and we'll show some of our highest transaction changes here based on the counts. This screen is going to show you what was in the location and what the user counted and what the difference is in quantity, what they've adjusted. And this can also be your kind of your final filter before the inventory change hits your system. So you can see here at this location with the cap screws in it, there were none there. There were 500 counted, so it's a quantity transaction of plus 500. We can also see that there's a whole bunch of zeros here. So let me scroll down a little bit further. We could see negatives as well. So if we said, hey, they're supposed to be 10, but we counted zero, that's going to be a negative 10 transaction quantity. Now we have some buttons here that we can press. We can go into a detail to see the detail about that work, who completed it, kind of investigate that task or that work a little bit deeper at the work control number level. That's what when you see a button that says detail, that's typically what it's going to bring you to. We also have the approve or reject. So we can reject this and create an additional cycle count for that location, or we can say, you know what, it's okay. We have verified that there actually is no inventory there, even though we said we had 10, and it can approve it and move it forward. I think the best option is to do a location check when this occurs. Now, you can have this automatically create from the cycle count controls like we just showed, but let's say it was within that tolerance, but you still like to create a location check based on what you're seeing here. You can simply hit this location check button, and that's going to add what we call a location check to that location, which we're going to show in just a little bit here, what the location check process looks like. So that's what I wanted to show about cycle counts to start this off is if we go back to our cycle count tab, you could see the directed, which is what we just performed, where it brought us to a location. We could do cycle count location, which is almost the same process. The only difference is instead of being directed somewhere to complete an open cycle count, you're basically just walking up to a location and performing that count. I'd say that directed is more commonly used, but a lot of our customers like to have that ability to cycle count any location at any point in time. We just showed the posting approval. That's the screen we're on right now. And then we started with the cycle count controls, which is the whole rule set to automatically create these cycle counts and also what the user's experience is going to be during that counting process. So that was kind of the bulk of what we were going to talk about today. I want to show a few other flows though, like the location check, the inventory move, and the inventory adjustment. So we're going to go into that on the mobile device now. So if we come here we'll exit out of this cycle count and we're going to go into our inventory tab and you'll see these two here, inventory adjustment and inventory move. And then also location. We have our location check. And we also have a few others that you can do at a location. For example, if you want to display all of the products within a location by scanning it, or maybe you want to scan a product and see all of the locations that have that product, we have some workflows for that. But let's go into our location check. Now, this is going to be system directed, so it's going to ask us what zone that we are counting in. And um, I think I had some in zone 100. We'll find out by scanning zone 100. And it'll say no work found if we don't have any there. So then we could try a different zone, but we do have one. So we're going to go to this location, the 041-36B02. And when we scan that, it's going to tell us If there's any details about why that location check was created, this one might have been just me applying a location check. As we see, we don't have any details here. So we can just choose to cycle count right in the middle of this location check flow, or we can simply say, okay, everything's fine there, and we'll move on to our next location check. Um, so if we go into this next location, hopefully I have a reason of why this one was created so I could show you. We'll scan it, and here we go. So we've got some products there, some tomatoes, and we can see that we actually have multiple products in here, and it's showing some negative quantities, which is going to create a location check. So this is what we want to confirm. I probably have the same product, but with different lots or expiry controls. I actually see I have one without a lot here, so this is probably something that occurred from one of my demonstrations that I'd like to clean up. So instead of hitting OK in this, I would hit cycle count and launch right into a cycle count within this flow to really get this inventory corrected. So you're going to get details on who performed an action and why that location check occurred. You'll get that in the details here, and you'll also see the product image. Anytime that you would like to have product images show, that can happen in any of our workflows after the product is scanned. So we're gonna hit OK. I'm not worried about correcting the inventory in this fake environment. So we're gonna exit out of our location check, and I want to show you two more flows today before we break for questions. But as I mentioned before, the location checks are massively important to do. It's a way that you can ensure that you have healthy and accurate inventory year round by tackling it in real time rather than letting it pile up and impact other work like picking. It's something that saves a lot of footsteps, a lot of scans, a lot of additional workflows that you didn't need to do. So let's go into our inventory adjustment and inventory moves. So I'm going to go to our inventory move here. And to kind of assist with this, what I'm going to do is a lookup inventory by product just to be able to grab a location that has some inventory in it so I can pretend to move it. And we are going to look up one of my products, 2287. This shows how much I have in each area. So if we drill down into our prime area, we'll choose one of those locations. And you can see them all listed right here. So you can see some of them actually are marked with a location check. And then also some of them have an outbound quantity, meaning that there's picks allocated against this location. So if we go to try to move inventory from a location that has a pick allocated, it's not going to let us move that because we don't want to impact what the picker's going to see there at that location. They thought they were going to go be able to pick this SKU, or the system thought it, but then all of a sudden they get there and it had been moved. So we'll actually block that and say cannot be moved if you have, say, a location check or a pick that's out there against it. Um, so let's go ahead and we'll grab one of these locations. We'll go with uh, we'll go with this one right here, the 053-08 EO3. All right, my location names are kind of long sometimes. But we'll scan that, and that's going to say, all right, what are you moving out of it? I know I have that product 2287. So if this is multiple products, we could choose which one we're moving. Since there's only one product in here, it's telling us what's there. And we can choose how much we'd like to move. So I see I have 17 of them in there. I'm just going to move one so I don't mess up my inventory too badly. Now, if you look down below, you'll see the buttons move and move all. Move is going to say, okay, let's move this quantity we entered. Or if you just like to move all the inventory from one location to another without having to do the quantity step, we have a button for that. So let's go ahead and hit move. And I'm going to move this in, and this is our scan to location, so somewhere we want to move it to. I'm going to select this one right here, 051-40A01. So we'll scan that. You'll see it says processing, which means it's moving that inventory. So now we've successfully moved one of those items from one location to another. It's going to be factoring in rules like I mentioned before, understanding if you have outbound quantities that we don't want to impact, or if you have a location check that's about to be performed, or maybe someone's, actively tied to work to it, and we don't want to move inventory from a location that someone's actively assigned to in some sort of task. So that's our inventory move, very straightforward. And then even more straightforward is our inventory adjustment. So if we go back to our inventory tab and go into our inventory adjustment. This is going to, again, ask you which location you're adjusting in. So we'll grab one of these locations again, um, right here. And I'm just going to copy and paste so I don't have to type it. And we'll enter our location. Now, here's where you're going to say, okay, which product are you adjusting in this location? So we'll say 2287. And here, you can see my picture file is now. I need to redo my picture for this. It's probably an old link from this product, but we'll be able to select a reason code, and this is very important for inventory adjustments because those are going to be part of your inventory transactions interface back up to the host system. Inventory transactions can be from picks, they can be from adjustments, they can be from moves, they can be from, identifying something as damage. So you'll have these reference and reason codes that also go with this inventory transaction back up to the host system. So in JASCI, you can set up whatever reason codes you'd like to. And we also have one called Note. Now I am simulating this device on Google Chrome, so when I click this drop down, you're going to see real small options here that I can select. That's just a Google Chrome thing for my demonstrations. On the device, it's pulling up in full size right on the screen. But I'm going to click the one that says Note, and actually save a note to this, which is going to populate in our reference field for this inventory transaction. So I'll just put, since we're doing a webinar, I'll type in webinar and save that. And now we're going to say, okay, what is the quantity that we're adjusting this to? So I'll say we're going to take one out and use it for our webinar. So now we're going to change this from 16, which is currently there, to 15. So when I enter that 15, it's going to give you the ability to then say, okay, let's update. And then it's going to give us kind of a summary of what we just did. And it'll also show if you had expiry, if you had lot, if you had LPN, which these are all null values right now because it's not a lot or expiry controlled product. And I'm also not storing this product by LPN. But you'd be able to see that preview of what you're about to confirm. Just in case you did make a mistake and you said, oh, I fat thumbed the wrong expiration or lot, etc. So we'll go ahead and hit confirm, and that is going to bring us to adjust another location if we'd like to. So just a quick review, we went over the cycle counting, the controls, the workflows, the approval screen, um, and how it's system directed. We talked about location check, which is similar to cycle count, being that you can actually perform a cycle count in the location check, but it's going to be system directed to locations where we know we have an issue. And then we also showed our pretty basic inventory adjustment and inventory move workflows, which are commonly used in any warehouse. Now, our goal is to not have you do too many inventory moves with logic like our replenishment, which will be coming up in a future webinar. But if you have any questions on the workflows that I just showed, feel free to put them into the chat or to reach out to us via email or on our website. And we'd be happy to clear up any questions that you have or give you a further demonstration. All right, James, I'll pass it back to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Joe. I don't see any questions in the chat at the moment, so we'll give it a
Great.
couple seconds. But yeah, if everyone here, our next webinar will be on Friday the 16th. So we'll be going over some of our replenishment controls and kitting logic. So that'll be another a demonstration for another time. So we look forward to seeing you
Yep.
there. Okay.
Yep. Thanks for watching, everyone.